There was a shrimp tail stuck to my shoe when she saw me. That's the first thing I remember. Not the noise of the ballroom, not the laughter from the corner table, not even the new client I was trying to impress. Just that little pink shrimp tail clinging to my worn black loafer like some absurd symbol of everything I couldn't control. And then I looked up, and her face was already crumbling. 3 seconds. That's all it took. 3 seconds of eye contact, and Hazel, yes, that Hazel, completely fell apart in front of 50 polished professionals and at least 2 board members. One moment she was clutching a wine glass, standing next to her boss with that fake composed posture she always used when lying. The next, gone. Gone as in, the glass hit the carpet. Her legs buckled. Her mascara ran like it remembered every lie she told me. A high-pitched sound came out of her throat. Not quite a scream, but not human either. And then she dropped to her knees. No warning. No build-up. Just complete breakdown. And I stood there, holding a damn cocktail meatball and a binder of quarterly estimates. You have to understand, I hadn't seen her in 3 years. Not since the night she vanished. Not since the voicemail she left at 3:17 a.m. saying she was so sorry and maybe someday I'd understand. I didn't understand. I still don't. She didn't leave me for someone else, at least not that I know of. She didn't empty my bank account. She didn't take the car, or the dog, or even the weird cactus lamp we both hated. She just evaporated, took a red-eye flight out of our life, and never looked back. No address, no forwarding number, no clues. I grieved her like a death, and in many ways, it was one. A slow, stupid, invisible death that no one brought casseroles for. And now she was here, sobbing on the carpet of the Wyndham Conference Center during an awards mixer for regional suppliers. And everyone was staring at me, like I had done something, like I was the problem. I should have walked away, but I didn't, because there was something in her eyes, something I hadn't seen even when she was packing her bags at 2 a.m., with trembling hands and half-finished excuses. It wasn't regret. It was fear. Real, raw, animal fear. Like I wasn't the only ghost in the room. The moment Hazel collapsed, a silence fell over the room that didn't belong in a networking event. It was like the ceiling itself sucked the air out. No more chatter, no laughter, no clinking of glasses. Just her sobs, messy, jagged, and disjointed, echoing off the catering table as if the shrimp skewers were bearing witness. 2 security guards approached from opposite ends of the room. One had a walkie clipped to his chest that kept crackling nonsense, something about valet traffic. Neither of them moved quickly. You could tell they thought it was some drunk meltdown. A little too much Pinot, maybe. Someone would offer a glass of water, walk her outside, pat her back, and pretend they hadn't seen what they clearly had. But this wasn't that. Hazel wasn't drunk. Hazel wasn't okay. She was whispering something, over and over, barely audible. Her fingers were clawing into the carpet like she was trying to peel it up. Her whole body shivered like she'd been dropped in ice water. I didn't even realize I'd moved closer until I could hear her breathing, fast and broken. And then she looked up at me. "He's here," she said. At first, I thought she meant me, and for a second, I almost felt flattered in some twisted, miserable way. Like maybe seeing me again had stirred some conscience. Maybe I wasn't as forgettable as she made me feel the night she disappeared. But then she said it again, louder. "He's here. He found me. He followed. He was never supposed to." One of the guards crouched beside her, muttering something about needing to get medical staff. Her date, or whoever the man in the navy blazer was, had vanished the moment she hit the floor. I didn't see him slip away, but he was gone. Not comforting her. Not helping. Just gone. Like a bad dream, trying not to get caught in the light. And then Hazel grabbed my arm. Her nails dug in through my dress shirt like she didn't know how skin worked anymore. Her eyes locked onto mine with a kind of desperation that felt ancient, animalistic. "You still have the book, right?" she hissed. "The what?" "The red one," she continued, barely blinking. "Tell me you didn't throw it away." I was frozen. The only red book I could think of was some promotional binder we got from our old realtor with emergency numbers and a useless fire escape map for our condo. That couldn't be it. I hadn't seen that thing in years. I don't know, I mumbled. "What book? Hazel, what's going on?" She didn't answer. She turned her head sharply, eyes scanning the crowd like a hunted animal. And that's when I noticed something strange. No one was recording. In 2025, in a room filled with middle managers and junior execs, Not a single phone was out. Not one. Everyone was just watching. Frozen. Like they wanted to pull out their phones, but something stopped them. Like they didn't dare. Hazel started to cry again, but it wasn't the same as before. These weren't sobs. These were small, quiet, rhythmic gasps. Like she was trying to breathe through something crushing her chest from the inside. Then she whispered, "He's going to find you next." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I was barely holding it together. I wanted to laugh, cry, run, disappear. Anything but stand in that spotlight while my ex-wife fell apart and dragged me into a nightmare I didn't understand. Security finally helped her to her feet. A woman in a headset ran over with a clipboard and led them toward a side exit, whispering apologies to anyone important along the way. Hazel didn't look back. She was still whispering something to herself, her hand trembling at her side like it wanted to reach for mine, but couldn't risk the cost. And just like that, she was gone again. 3 years of nothing. And now this. A full-on breakdown. A cryptic warning. A red book I didn't remember owning. I stood there, blinking, sweating through the collar of my shirt. The shrimp tail had finally fallen off my shoe. Someone behind me coughed. The music started again. And the crowd, all of them, just slowly resumed pretending like none of it had happened. Except one woman, far in the back. A woman I'd never seen before. She was still watching me. Expressionless. Motionless. Holding something red under her arm. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even pretend to. My hotel room felt like a hospital ward after visiting hours. Cold, hollow, and filled with sounds that didn't belong. The ice machine in the hallway. The distant hum of an elevator. Somewhere, a faucet dripping like a clock counting down to something I didn't want to reach. I kept replaying Hazel's words. "He's here. He's going to find you next. Tell me you didn't throw it away." Each phrase was a splinter lodged deeper the more I tried to pull it out. When I closed my eyes, I saw her face on that ballroom carpet. Pale, trembling, eyes darting around like there was someone just behind me. And the way everyone else just froze. I'd seen people film car crashes for views. I'd seen strangers live stream arguments in grocery stores. But no one had taken their phone out for her. Not one. That's what scared me the most. By the time the sun dragged itself through the blinds, I looked like a raccoon who'd lost a custody battle. My tie was still hanging from the nightstand, my shirt wrinkled, my phone full of half-typed texts I never sent. At 8:12 a.m., there was a knock at my door. It wasn't housekeeping. Too gentle. Too deliberate. "Who is it?" I called out, my voice cracking more than I wanted it to. Silence. Then, a second knock. 2 short taps, like a rhythm. Not threatening, just wrong. I opened the door. Nobody. Just a hallway that smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and burnt coffee. The kind of smell that always felt like hotels were trying to cover something up. But on the floor, right in front of my door, was a hotel envelope. Unmarked. Cream-colored. Thin. I crouched, picked it up, and immediately recognized the handwriting on the front. Hazel's. That looping, impatient scrawl she used when she was rushing or scared. My stomach tightened. Inside, there was a single key card. No note, no message, no clue. Just a key to another room. Room 514. My hand trembled as I held it. I looked both ways down the hall, but no one was there. Just the faint sound of someone vacuuming somewhere on another floor. Part of me wanted to go to the front desk. Report it. Pretend I was rational, responsible, normal. But rational people don't stand in hotel corridors gripping mystery, key cards left by crying ex-wives who vanished for 3 years and reappeared at corporate mixers. Rational people go back inside, lock the door, and check out early. I wasn't rational. I was Linwood. The man who never says what he should, never leaves when it's smart to, and never quite stops hoping things will somehow make sense again. I pocketed the key and walked. The 5th floor was quieter. Dimmer somehow. The lights flickered slightly, that cheap, rhythmic kind of flicker that always happens when you're trying not to feel watched. Every few steps, I passed another identical door. 507, 509, 511. The door was slightly ajar. Not enough to see inside, but enough to know it wasn't locked. I hesitated, heart hammering. "Hazel," I whispered, my throat tight. Nothing. Just air conditioning. I pushed the door open slowly. The room was empty, or so I thought. The curtains were drawn shut, the air stale and heavy with something metallic. On the desk was a folder. Red. Old. Faded at the edges like it had survived smoke or time. The red book. My chest tightened. I took a step closer. The cover wasn't blank this time. It had a word on it, handwritten in what looked like black ink or marker. Egress. I didn't know what it meant, but my fingers still opened it. Inside were photos. Not of people. Of rooms. Hotel rooms. Dozens of them. Each photo looked almost identical. Neatly made beds, lamps on, empty chairs. But in every single one, in the far right corner near the bathroom door, there was always something blurry. A figure. Faint. Distorted. Sometimes just a shape. Sometimes a face, half hidden by shadow. Always the same place. In the back of the book, taped to the last page, was a note. Small, messy, written in the same hand as the envelope. If he knocks, don't answer. No matter what name he uses. I dropped the book. It hit the carpet softly, and then the lights in the room flickered once, twice. And the doorknob behind me started to turn. The doorknob didn't jiggle. It rotated slowly, with precision, like whoever was on the other side wasn't uncertain. They weren't checking if the room was empty. They knew someone was in here. I stood frozen between the desk and the dresser, one hand still resting on the red book, the other gripping the edge of the desk like it might hold me up if my knees gave out. Then came the knock. Just one. Not urgent. Not angry. Just deliberate. Like punctuation after a sentence I didn't hear. That knock didn't ask for permission. It assumed I'd listen. I didn't speak. Didn't breathe. Then a voice came through the door. Linwood. I didn't recognize it. It wasn't Hazel's. It was a man's voice. Calm, warm, and impossibly polite. Like a school counselor or the host of a podcast about murder cases. His tone made my skin crawl because it wasn't threatening. It was casual. Rehearsed. Hi, Linwood. Sorry to intrude. You left something behind at the mixer. My jaw locked. I hadn't left anything. I didn't even bring a bag. Just my binder and my phone, both of which were now sitting useless in my hotel room upstairs. I can slide it under the door, if you prefer. The voice was so close now, right up against the wood. I backed away slowly, accidentally bumping into the chair beside the window. It creaked, loud enough to break the illusion of silence. The man on the other side didn't react. Instead, he said, Hazel told me you might be difficult. That's okay. We have time. Something shifted in me then, not bravery, exactly. Not courage. Just a breaking point. Like my brain gave up on pretending this was all some stress dream and finally allowed the fear to settle. Who are you? I asked. My voice cracked. No answer. Not right away. Then came a breath, too close, too steady, and a reply that still rattles around in my skull like a marble in a jar. I'm the one who stayed. And then, silence. No footsteps. No departing sound. Just gone. I waited. 30 seconds. Then a minute. Then 5. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely put the red book back into my backpack. I kept my eyes on the door the entire time, terrified it would fly open, even though I knew the latch was still hanging. I didn't dare peek out the peephole. I didn't want to see him. Or worse, not see him. Eventually, I left. I didn't check out. Didn't pack properly. I just grabbed what I could and left the key card on the bed like a coward's version of a calling card. As I passed the front desk, the woman working there didn't even look up. It felt like she was deliberately pretending I didn't exist. By the time I reached my car in the garage, I was drenched in sweat. Not from the sprint, but from the slow, paralyzing pressure that had been squeezing my chest since Hazel hit that carpet. I sat behind the wheel for nearly 10 minutes before I could bring myself to start the ignition. I drove. No destination. Just away. Mile markers blurred past. Coffee shops I didn't stop at. Gas stations I skipped because they felt too empty. Eventually, I pulled into a rest stop 3 hours east. Parked between 2 semi-trucks. Locked the doors. Sat there in silence. That's when I opened the red book again. I needed answers. There were more than just photos in the back. I hadn't noticed them before. Tucked between the last few pages were slips of receipt paper, small napkins with frantic scribbles, sticky notes with numbers and partial names. And one Polaroid. Different from the rest. It wasn't a hotel room. It was a house. My house. The one Hazel and I shared before she vanished. The photo was taken from the street, at night, through a car windshield. You could see the porch light was on. You could see Cooper, our dog, sleeping on the welcome mat. You could even see me through the living room window, sitting on the couch, watching TV. It was dated 2 weeks after she left, which means someone had been watching me. Not just her. I dropped the photo like it burned. My heart was slamming so hard I thought it might crack a rib. That's when my phone buzzed. I flinched. Looked down. No number. Just one word on the screen. Egress. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I turned the phone off. Threw it in the glove compartment. And for the first time in years, I cried like a child. Not because I was heartbroken. Because I finally understood I'd never known Hazel at all. And whatever was coming for her had already started looking for me. I didn't want to go back to her apartment. Honestly, I didn't even know where back was supposed to be. Hazel had dropped off the face of the earth 3 years ago. New number. New name, probably. Maybe new country. And yet somehow, she'd been close this entire time, just a few hours away. Showing up in my world like she'd never left it. Like she could still grab my wrist and whisper things I didn't understand. It took me a full day to convince myself I wasn't imagining what happened at the hotel. I kept second-guessing every detail. Did the knock actually happen? Did I really hear that voice say my name? Did I read egress on that book? Or did my brain just attach meaning to something it couldn't process? But then came the text. That word glowing on my locked screen like it had been waiting all along. Not a name. Not a number. Just that one cold word. So I started digging. Hazel's parents had moved to Arizona after the divorce. Her sister was off the grid. Last I'd heard, she'd gotten into one of those traveling cult-adjacent yoga retreats. Most of her old friends either ghosted me or unfollowed both of us like we were radioactive. I had no real leads. But then I remembered something. A receipt. One of the torn slips tucked inside the red book. It had a logo on it. A dry cleaner's name I vaguely recognized. Swan Street Eco Wash. A boutique place in a rougher part of the city, where Hazel used to take her coats because they didn't use those toxic chemical solvents that smell like divorce. I found the address online. No website. No reviews. Just a half-lit Google Maps pin and a phone number that went straight to voicemail. But I drove there anyway. What else was I going to do? Sit in my car and wait for another text that might never come? The shop looked abandoned. Boards over the side windows. A cracked bell above the entrance that didn't jingle when I pushed the door open. Inside, dust floated in thick stripes of light between broken blinds. The counter was still there. So were the old clothes racks. Dozens of plastic-covered jackets. Untouched. Forgotten. But behind the counter was a bulletin board. Old flyers. Business cards. And one yellow sticky note, barely clinging to the cork. 3F. Tuesday pickup. H. Ellers. Paid. Hazel never used her full name. Ever. But Ellers? That was her maiden name. She must have used it to go off the grid. The address was scribbled on the back of the note. A few blocks away. I pocketed it without thinking. By the time I reached the building, it was already dusk. A 6-story brick apartment complex. The kind built in the late 70s and left to rot under layers of gray paint and poor lighting. I buzzed every number on the call box. No one answered. Finally, someone exited with a bag of trash, and I slipped inside like a coward. Unit 3F was at the end of a dim hallway. Peeling wallpaper. That faint mildew smell that clings to old carpets and broken elevators. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe nothing. Maybe to find out she'd moved months ago, and I'd built everything up in my head again. But the door wasn't locked. It was slightly ajar, again, just like the hotel room. I pushed it open. Called her name. No answer. The apartment was dark, save for one low lamp in the corner. The air was stuffy, like no one had breathed in it for days. Dishes sat in the sink. A teacup balanced on the edge of the bookshelf. And there, on the couch, was Hazel's coat, the same green one from the mixer. She'd been here. Recently. And on the floor, near the coffee table, was another Polaroid. This time it wasn't a hotel room. It was me. Taken at the rest stop 2 nights ago. My car in the frame. My face lit by the dashboard light. I was hunched over the steering wheel, eyes red, crying. Someone had been there. Watching. While I thought I was alone in the safest place I could find. I backed away, heart in my throat, when I noticed something even worse. Pinned to the wall, directly above the couch, was a map. And on that map were dozens of little red dots. Hotels. Rest stops. My old apartment. My current office. A park I visited last summer. A grocery store I hadn't been to in months. Every place I'd been in the last 3 years. Tracked. Cataloged. Marked. And in the bottom corner of the map, scrawled in thick, uneven marker. Egress. 1 exit. Only one. Choose wrong. He finds you. I stumbled backward and knocked over the coffee table. A folder slid out from underneath it, spilling its contents. Letters, newspaper clippings, all with names I didn't recognize. Except one. A woman named Beatrice Langston, Hazel's college roommate. She died 2 years ago. Suicide, they'd said. I remembered Hazel crying about it, back when we still talked. She said Beatrice had become paranoid toward the end. Said she was seeing things. Shadows. Mirrors acting strange. She stopped using her phone. Threw out all her electronics. Moved constantly. And now her name was here, too. Circled. Annotated. I picked up one of the letters addressed to Beatrice, dated just a month before her death. If you're reading this, B, I've failed. He's closer than I thought. Don't trust reflections. Don't answer to your name after midnight. If he knocks, don't. The letter ended mid-sentence. Torn. The back of the page had only one thing on it. A mirror, drawn in ink. A rough sketch. And inside it, a stick figure, smiling. But upside down. That's when I noticed the sound behind me. A soft creak. Floorboards. From the hallway. I wasn't alone anymore. The creak came again, closer this time, heavier. A deliberate step. Floorboards don't lie. It wasn't the shifting of the building. Someone was out there. I stood completely still in Hazel's dim apartment, barely breathing. My eyes darted to the front door, which was still slightly ajar from when I came in. The hallway behind it was pitch black. I could see nothing, but I could feel something. That strange, electric kind of awareness, like when your stomach knows there's something watching you before your brain catches up. There was no back exit. No fire escape. No window I could safely crawl through. I was stuck, with a wall covered in red pins and maps tracking me, a Polaroid of myself I didn't know had been taken, and a folder of letters from a dead woman who said not to answer if someone knocked. I didn't know whether to call the police or set the place on fire. The door moved slightly, just enough for the hinges to make that soft pop, that unmistakable sound of air pressure shifting as something steps into a room. I grabbed the nearest object I could find, a cast iron candle holder shaped like a fox. It was heavy and sharp. I didn't think I'd use it, but my hand needed something to hold that wasn't fear. Another step, this time inside. I was no longer imagining it. Someone had entered, and then I heard the voice. Hazel. It wasn't the same man from the hotel. This voice was younger, unsure, almost apologetic. I saw your light on. I brought your coat back. You left it at my place. I froze. The green coat. It was on the couch, which meant Hazel had been here recently. But this voice, it didn't sound threatening. It sounded like a neighbor. A kid, maybe mid-20s. Friendly. Casual. But wrong in a way I couldn't explain. I stayed completely still, crouched behind the couch. I could see his shadow now, faint, stretched across the living room floor. He was holding something. A plastic hanger. Her coat draped over it. And then he stepped fully into the room. Thin. Short. Curly hair. Glasses. He looked like someone who would run a sci-fi podcast. He glanced around, confused. Hazel. He didn't see me yet. I just wanted to drop this off. I didn't mean to. He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes landed on the wall of maps. The clippings. The red book still open on the floor. His body language shifted immediately, from casual to frozen. He dropped the coat. Took one step backward. I shouldn't be here, he whispered. And then he ran. Just like that. Bolted through the doorway like he saw something worse than me. I waited a full minute before moving. Then I rushed to the hallway. But he was already gone. I heard the building's entrance door swing shut 5 seconds later. I didn't chase him. I didn't even know if I should. Instead, I stood there in the doorway of Unit 3F, breathing like I'd just escaped drowning. And then, I did the one thing I shouldn't have done. I looked into the mirror in Hazel's hallway. It wasn't much. Just a narrow strip of glass above a dusty console table. A standard rental unit mirror with a few smudges, nothing special. But my reflection was off. Subtly, maddeningly off. I was standing still, but my reflection swayed, just slightly. My arms were at my sides, but the mirrored version had one hand half raised, fingers twitching. My mouth was closed. His was smiling. Not a grin. Not menacing. Just faint. Pleased. And he was looking at me. Not through me. Not with me. At me. Like he was waiting. I blinked and stepped back, and my reflection snapped back to match me perfectly. Nothing wrong. Nothing unnatural. My knees buckled. I stumbled backward and nearly fell onto the hallway floor. I didn't care about the letters anymore. Or the Polaroids. Or the map. I just wanted out. I ran. Out of 3F. Down the stairs 2 at a time. I pushed through the front door of the apartment complex and didn't stop running until I reached the gas station 5 blocks down. I stayed there for an hour, pretending to shop for snacks. Every time the bell above the door chimed, I jumped. The cashier asked if I was okay. I said I was just tired. Eventually, I sat in my car in the parking lot and cried again. Not because of Hazel, or the voice, or the man with the coat, or the map, or even the mirror. I cried because I knew I wasn't going to walk away from this. Whatever this was. Because I couldn't unsee it. Couldn't unknow it. Couldn't pretend it was Hazel's problem anymore. This thing. Egress. The tracking. The smiling reflection. The man who said, "I'm the one who stayed." It wasn't just after her. It had moved on. To me. I didn't go home. I couldn't. After what happened in Hazel's apartment. The voice, the reflection, the expression that wasn't mine. I couldn't trust silence anymore. Every quiet room felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for me to walk in. Every mirror became a window I was scared to look through. I slept in my car again. In a Walmart parking lot this time, surrounded by RVs and the steady drone of a distant highway. It wasn't safe, but it felt invisible. And invisible was the closest thing to safety I had left. When the sun rose, I drove to a small-town public library 2 counties over. I didn't know what I was looking for exactly. Answers, maybe. Patterns. Anything that could prove I wasn't losing my mind. I had a name now, Beatrice Langston, Hazel's college roommate. She had clearly known something. She'd left warnings. Symbols. Letters filled with instructions and dread. And then I remembered Hazel mentioning once, back when she still talked about things that didn't involve silence and avoidance, that Beatrice had a brother. Miles, she'd said. Total conspiracy theorist. You'd love him. So I searched. Not online. Not on social media. I wasn't taking any digital risks anymore. No emails. No messages. No pings that could be tracked. I used public records, old newspapers, a copy machine that sounded like it hated itself. And I found him. Miles Langston, 41, living off-grid in a rural township called Saddle Creek. Population 2,108. Known locally for fixing antique radios and scaring the neighbors with long rants at town meetings about synthetic surveillance and invisible operators. He was my only shot. I drove 5 hours without stopping. His property was easy to find. The only house in town with motion sensor alarms that announced your arrival. A speaker near the fence blared, "You are being recorded," in a robotic voice the moment my tires touched his gravel driveway. Wind chimes spun above a porch layered with rusted coffee cans and thick, tangled vines. The windows were blacked out with newspaper. A satellite dish pointed downward, buried halfway in soil. I knocked. Once. Then again. No answer. I turned to leave, and that's when I heard the bolt slide open behind me. Miles was tall, unshaved, wore 2 different socks and a shirt that read, "Ask me about the simulation, just kidding, please don't." He looked like someone who hadn't willingly spoken to a stranger in a decade. He also looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. "I was wondering when you'd show up," he said. I didn't speak at first. I think I just blinked. "Hazel warned me," he added, stepping aside. "She said if he ever pivoted, it'd be through someone like you." I entered slowly. His home was part bunker, part museum, part madhouse. Every inch of the walls was covered in clippings, wires, annotated maps, mirrors turned face down, and red yarn connecting photos of people I didn't recognize. Most had large black XS drawn over their eyes. He offered me instant coffee. I declined. My throat was already a knot. "Do you know what egress is?" I asked. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "No one knows," he said. "That's the point." He led me to a back room. It had no windows. One dim lamp. A single file box labeled the ones who answered. Inside were obituaries. Dozens. All people under 40. Different states. No obvious connections, until you noticed the patterns. Every single one had either changed their name within a year of their death, moved at least 3 times, and had a mirror smashed in their home, according to the police reports. Most died of exposure, exhaustion, or, as one phrasing put it, unexplained catatonic collapse. "They never make it to 40, Miles muttered. "None of them. That's how long it takes, for it to root, for the pattern to finish." The pattern of what? He sat across from me and leaned in. They all heard knocking. I nearly choked. Miles continued. "Not banging. Not pounding. One knock. Always one. Always right after something is taken from them. A person. A memory. A piece of time. And always right before the mirrors go wrong. I told him about the man in the hallway. The voice that called my name. The red book. The Polaroid of me crying in the car. He nodded. Not surprised. It always starts the same, he whispered. They notice you. Then they track you. Then they test you. Test me. To see how long it takes you to open the door. I felt sick. You want to survive? Miles asked, voice low. You never opened the door. Not for any voice. Not even your own. I froze. What do you mean, my own? Miles stood and walked to a shelf. Pulled down an old tape recorder. Hit play. At first, I heard nothing. Then static. Then a voice. My voice. Hey, it's me. Can you open the door? I don't want to scare you. I just need to talk. I jerked back. That's me. Where did you? I recorded that last year. From a guy in Arizona. It mimicked his voice too. Same exact tone. Same pitch. It doesn't sound like something terrifying. It sounds like you. That's the point. It doesn't take shape unless it knows it can pass as trust. I was spiraling. I'm not crazy, right? No, he said. You're late. I didn't know what that meant. Then he handed me a small black envelope. Sealed with wax. What is this? The place Hazel's hiding now. She'll only meet you once. If you want answers, real ones, you go tonight. I opened the envelope. Inside was an address. And a time. 2:03 a.m. Tonight. He placed one last thing in my hand. A roll of tape. Old school cassette tape. Handwritten label. Do not play unless he knocks. Pray you never need this, he said. As I stepped outside, I asked him the one question I hadn't dared to speak. Why does it want us? He didn't hesitate. Because we're the only ones who remember. I arrived early. The address was an abandoned greenhouse on the edge of a state park, tucked between a forgotten walking trail and a dried-up riverbed. The kind of place that doesn't appear on GPS and doesn't want to be remembered. The only light came from the stars above and a flickering lantern someone had left hanging inside, casting long, leafy shadows across the fogged glass walls. 2:03 a.m. was etched in my head like a countdown. I didn't know if Hazel would show. I didn't know if this was even real, or just the final stop in whatever psychological breakdown I'd been barreling towards since that ballroom 3 weeks ago. All I knew was that if I didn't come, I'd regret it, and I was done living with new regrets. So I waited. At 2:02, I heard footsteps. Not loud. Careful. Measured. Then she appeared in the doorway. Hazel. Older. Thinner. Worn down in a way that no skincare product could fix, but not broken. There was a new sharpness in her eyes, like she had seen every corner of a nightmare and mapped it out just enough to survive inside it. You came, she said softly. I nodded, unable to speak. She walked in, closed the door behind her, and sat across from me at an old potting table. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, just heavy, like both of us knew too much for small talk. I wanted to explain, she began, voice trembling. Back then, when I left, I wasn't running from you. I was trying to keep it from spreading. It. She nodded. The knock. The mirror. The mimic. Whatever you want to call it. I don't know what it really is. But it follows patterns. Like a script. And I broke mine when I left. That's how I survived. She opened her bag and pulled out another red book. Newer, cleaner, but with the same black handwriting across the front. Egress. This one's for you, she said. Your name is in it now. You've been marked. But that doesn't mean you're doomed. Just watched. I opened the book slowly. Inside were new photos. New notes. New names. My name was circled, with lines branching out to places I'd visited. People I'd spoken to. And one word. Deviation successful. I looked at her, confused. I did something they didn't expect, she said. I warned you. And that changed something. She smiled. A real smile. The first I'd seen in years. It always changes something when we warn each other. That's the part they can't predict. Empathy. Connection. The decision not to be isolated. They expect us to run. To hide. To silence ourselves with fear. But when we reach out, when we talk, it disrupts the script. I didn't realize I was crying until she reached across the table and wiped a tear from my cheek. You're not cursed, Linwood. You're just aware now. I laughed through the tears. That's not exactly comforting. She leaned forward. It's enough. We sat there in silence for a while longer, the greenhouse buzzing faintly with the sound of wind through broken panes. She told me she'd been part of a network, small, quiet, never online, of people who had broken from their paths. Some were rebuilding lives off-grid. Others were quietly guiding new people through the early stages. She'd become one of them. Not hunted, not haunted, just human again. And then she handed me the cassette. The one Miles gave you. I asked. She nodded. That version was blank. Just a decoy. She placed a second cassette in my palm, unlabeled, old, scratched. This is the real one. You'll know when to play it. But I hope you never have to. And then she stood. I can't stay here long. I've already bent too many rules. Will I see you again? I asked. She paused. I hope not. I laughed again, and this time, it felt clean. Not hollow. Not broken. Before she left, she turned to me one last time. Remember, she said, voice firm. If he knocks, don't open the door. But if you knock, make sure it's to help someone else escape. Then she was gone, and I was alone. But I wasn't scared. It's been 6 months since that night. I moved, changed my number, deleted my old accounts. Not out of fear, but out of clarity. I still see reflections that linger too long. I still hear knocks I pretend are pipes. But I sleep better now. I keep the red book in a locked drawer, and I haven't opened it since. Most importantly, I started reaching out. There are people like me. People who've heard the voice. People who've seen the smile that isn't theirs. And now, they have someone who believes them. That's my purpose now. Not to fight some unseen force, but to keep the door closed and the line open. Because egress isn't just about escape. It's about choosing to live when fear says otherwise. And for the first time in a long, long time, I'm choosing to live.